Hi, this is Ken Parker, welcoming you to another episode of Common Ground, the policy roundtable where we bring together a panel with diverse views on issues of concern to Newton residents and try to hammer out some of our differences. For those of you who are new to our show, let's review our format. First, I introduce a topic. Then we go around the table once, with each panelist expressing a viewpoint. I then select the two panelists who disagree the most strongly and ask them to speak directly to one another in hopes of finding some area of agreement. Now, tonight's show is one of our election year specials. The last couple shows have been interviews with mayoral candidates. We had Scott Lennon on 2 months ago, and then last show we had Ruth Ann Fuller. And next show we'll actually be back to our mayoral interview theme, where we'll have Amy Sangiolo on. But the other big topic this year is the proposed charter change that was recommended by the Charter Commission. I should say set of changes. These proposed charter amendments will be on the ballot in November, and so this is an issue of concern to all Newton residents who care about what is essentially our city constitution. So over the course of these months, I'm having on, just as I'm having on all of the candidates for mayor, I'm also having on as many advocates as I can get on both sides of the charter issue. Now, ideally, we'd like to have those advocates all at the table together, but we can't fit them all at the same table, and people's schedules are such that, unfortunately, tonight we don't have as much diversity of opinion as I would have liked. I invited folks from the Charter Commission, and we've had charter commissioners on in the past, including the chair, Josh Krinsman, and we will be in the coming months having at least 3 more charter commissioners on the show. And we've invited folks from both the yes and the no campaigns. The yes campaign was unable to send someone on the notice, the short notice that our show provides. But the no campaign was apparently very well organized, and even with the ridiculously short notice that Common Ground offers on all of our invitations to panelists, they were able to provide 2 people. So what I'm going to do tonight is I've done some research, and as a lawyer, I can advocate a viewpoint that I don't necessarily agree with. So I'm going to, to keep the no folks on their toes, I'm actually going to read from some of the policy positions and arguments that the yes campaign has, and let the no people respond. And of course, there'll hopefully be some more back and forth over future shows. And then in October, we're going to have everybody together. So I think we'll hopefully hear from, over the course of the next few months, Brian Barash and Chris Steele has agreed to be on. And then in the November show, I know we'll have Brooke Lipset, who is a member of the Charter Commission, and we'll invite the no folks back so we can have have another powwow that time with everyone. So with that caveat, that we won't have quite as much diversity of opinion tonight. Oh, maybe we will. Maybe we'll be surprised. Maybe our guests will. I'm going to introduce, I'm very excited about this panel because it's 2 first-time panelists on Common Ground. Very smart, interesting people that I'm just absolutely delighted to have at our table. Jack Pryor. Jack, welcome to Common Ground.
Thank you.
Jack, you are a scientist? Or?
I'm a process engineer, chemical engineer by training.
That sounds like a scientist to me, man.
And I work in the biopharmaceutical engineer as a manager director. Yeah.
So, scientist, right?
Yes, I guess. Yeah. Yes.
And
not a politician, first time on TV.
First time on TV.
Do our best.
Well, thank you for coming on Common Ground. And you are... You got involved in this no campaign as a concerned citizen. You've never run for office.
No, not very uninvolved with politics. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And Duney Roberts.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Such short notice, both of you.
Yeah.
Sent the email out to the 2 campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And Duney, you work for a large college in the area, I understand?
Yes. I'm a program administrator at the Center for Astrophysics at Harvard. Yeah.
Harvard, some little backwater institution.
Right, yeah. Maybe you've heard of it, local school.
Yeah. Look, yeah. I'm sure it's good for those people in Cambridge or whatever. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You said the Astrophysics department?
Yeah.
So you work with astrophysicists?
Yeah. I'm surrounded by scientists all day who are much smarter than I am, at least on the subjects.
Astrophysicists, I guess they have to be smart. Because, that goes with it.
Territory.
So, and you get to learn about some of the projects they're working on?
Yeah, I'm very involved. In fact, a lot of my work is injecting younger fresher perspectives into the Center for Astrophysics. So yeah.
That is really exciting and interesting stuff. We ought to have you on sometime just to talk about
Yeah, I would love to.
astrophysics
That'd be
and
awesome.
stuff like that. Anyway, really interesting stuff. Well, thank you. And you just recently got involved in this political scene?
I hopped into the world of Newton politics after I received a newsletter from one of our city councilors, Emily Norton.
Oh, wow. So you hadn't been involved in politics at all at that point?
Yeah, not locally, no. So I thought her pamphlet was really informative, and she had a great perspective, and I was convinced, so I wanted to
shout out to Emily Norton then. All right, cool. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to divide the charter proposed changes into 3 areas, and I'm going to briefly describe what the Charter Commission has recommended, and then I'm going to sort of say, here's their yes argument from the Yes Campaign website. Why is that wrong? Okay, and or why do you disagree with it? And I'll play devil's advocate a little bit in favor of that, just to keep the dialectic, as they say, going. So the first proposed change to the charter is to change the city council, which for many years was called the Board of Aldermen, recently renamed Newton City Council, from its current composition, which is 9 ward councilors, 8 ward councilors, 1 elected from each of the 8 wards. I just added another ward. 8 ward councilors, and 16 at large. Now, the at large councilors in Newton, which I was one of for 18 years, are elected they're elected by everyone voting citywide, but they're elected from a ward. So you have to live in that ward, and you have to run from that ward. So, and there's 2 from each of the 8 wards, thus 2 times 8 is 16. We've got brilliant people that can do this math here, and in our audience as well. So 16, I'm losing it. 16 at large, and I was an alderman at large from Ward 6 for 18 years, and then there are 8 ward councilors for a total of 24. The proposal is to cut that in half, first of all, from 24 to 12, get rid of the 8 ward councilors, get rid of 8 of the 16 at-large councilors, bringing it down to 8, one from each of the 8 wards, and then to add 4 new super at-large councilors, essentially, that can live anywhere in the city. So it would be all 16, all 12, 8 plus 4 would be elected citywide. So everyone in Newton would then vote in all of these races, but 8 of them would have a residency requirement. Whereas the other 4 would just be one big pool of everyone in the city would run in that last race. So what the Yes campaign says, first of all, Newton residents want a smaller council. They've voted for it in the past in advisory capacities. People think 24 is too large. It's unwieldy, unnecessary, inefficient. They say on their website, a smaller council means more transparency, less redundancy, more effectiveness. They think it would be higher voter turnout, and they argue that there'll be competition for seats. They say competition for seats is expected to increase. Candidates have another way to participate without directly competing with a candidate from their home ward whom they support or a popular incumbent. So this means if someone wants to run, they have sort of a choice of which way to run, I guess. They can run in the citywide pool or in the at-large from their ward pool. Candidates who are considering changing their residence within Newton have an option for running. So I guess what they're saying is you can run out in this big pool, and you can move around the city and not worry about leaving the ward you were elected to. Although under the current charter, you can move once you're elected. Anyway, I'm not sure I understand that point.
Right.
Candidates have an opportunity to win a plurality of votes rather than a majority. This is particularly helpful for candidates who represent a minority group or point of view. So this means you don't need a majority to win, but you don't need a majority to win under the current system. I'm not sure why that would be any different. I mean, you can win with a plurality under the current system for the at-large. Anyway, not sure I fully understand all those points, but these are the points that they're raising as to why the board should be cut, the council should be cut to 12 seats. So my question to the panel is simply, what's wrong with what's wrong with that argument?
Right. Well, there's a lot of points and there's a lot of weaknesses, and I hope your conversation can kind of draw it out of us, because neither of us are politicians that can stick to message. So I mean, I guess maybe just some background. I mean, I think the average Newton resident is busy, and they're focused on their day job and their lives, and they want the city to run well. If the city runs well, then that's good. They pay attention when overrides kick in or something is wrong in their environment. Let me just relate my personal experience, and I found it hard to understand when I first moved to the city. I've been here for 14 years. My first experience was when Newton North started to expand its parking restrictions away from the perimeter of the school, and that basically pushed the students who have a lot of cars eventually onto our street, which is somewhat narrow. And in the winter, got to the point with cars on both sides where fire engines, plows, the trash trucks couldn't pass. And luckily, someone on the street knew enough that there was such a thing as a ward alderman at the time, ward councilor now, to reach out to sort of go to walk us through the process of putting some parking restrictions that would just limit the quantity of students. There were 2-hour parking restrictions. So, that experience was my first exposure to City Hall. I don't think I stepped in it until
So
then.
you had a good experience with a ward councilor. Now the advocates for this are saying, well, the at-large councilors also provide good kid constituent service, so it doesn't make any difference. Do you have?
Well, I think the ward councilors clearly are, their mission is to service their ward. They're elected by the ward. They're the voters of the ward. Put them there. If they don't do a good job, they can take them out. If they're not doing a good job for the ward and are elected citywide, that's driven much more by name recognition, lawn signs, funding of campaigns. So that experience was the first time I experienced it. And I think a ward councilor is kind of like a primary care physician. If you don't see them, it's okay. things are working. But when there's a problem, they're an accessible
preventive medicine from your ward
Well,
councilor.
I mean, if you so I think we want so for me personally, there's a lot of points to make. I think we want the government. We expect Newton's government to run well and work well, and if it does, then we can continue in our lives. So that my personal concern with this is that I think for the government to work well, for the council to work well, it needs diversity of viewpoints. There's a lot of diverse interests, needs, policy interests of the city, and if that can be reflected and mirrored into the council, then the hope is through the process of discussion, deliberation, they'll come out with outcomes that work well for the city and that the city can buy into. So my concern with moving to it's really 100% at-large voting means that 100% of the council is going to be basically not catering, but if the ones that get in will be more homogeneous than they are today. And you were on the council, and it's a diverse group, it's a large group. And so with that diversity of people being elected at large, being elected in the ward, being elected by knocking on doors, being elected by representing the whole city, you end up with a more diverse group. And that's going to cut that down, and it'll lead to less discussion. And I think tonight could be an example. Let's do a show of hands who disagrees with the Charter Commission. All right. Okay, maybe we have 3, and let's move on, right? And so you need the discussion. So I think the first thing is 100% at large voting.
You
is
think
a
the
weakness.
100% at large, but what about this argument they're making that everyone gets to vote on every seat? So that's good. There's more accountability that way.
Well, I mean, accountability can get diluted. I mean, I get if your concern is with one councilor for an issue in your ward, for example, your ability to sway that councilor's outcome is diluted by the rest of the city. Your ability to know all those people and their positions is, so there is an issue. The council is large, and I think only the people who have served on the council truly know if it's too big or smaller. There is some point to consider it smaller. It's how they've made it smaller. I'm losing my point.
So the analogy is, well, obviously some offices federally we elect nationally, president.
Well, of
vice
course,
president,
right. So we
and
like
then
to.
we have people we elect by the states, and so we have like our senators from Massachusetts,
right, yeah,
senators from Texas.
So that's a perfect example.
What if we don't like what they're doing in Texas?
Well,
shouldn't we be able?
Well, can we in Massachusetts elect the entire House of Representatives?
Would it be a better system though if the entire Congress were elected nationwide?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I think that legislatures by and large are elected in a representative way that has some geographical diversity, and it's not where people live, but it's the votes of those slices of the country, of the state, and of the city.
I'm going to let Duney weigh in on this.
I agree with all the points that Jack made. I think the reduction of the council on its face, it sounds like a great idea, and the city commission the charter commission is using the 2 previous non-binding votes by the city to justify the reduction that they proposed. But the real issue is the at-large model. And I think the local representation is certainly under threat. If just like the examples you gave, our U.S. senators, whoever hears from their senator, I certainly don't. I don't think I have any influence over what they do and how they vote. And this only makes
well, just to be clear, my analogy is the senator from Massachusetts is elected only by Massachusetts residents.
Right.
They're not elected by Texas residents.
Right.
So that's analogous to like a ward councilor.
But I would, yeah, right.
I mean, and so.
But also to scale, it's not. I don't think it's.
So here's the analogy, just to be clear about what I'm asking.
Right.
Right now, every state elects their own senators, right?
Right.
It's just like ward aldermen,
Right.
basically, ward councilors. Every ward elects their own ward councilor. And to me, what the Charter Commission, the analogy is, what they're recommending is the entire Congress is elected by national vote, the same way we elect president and vice president.
Right.
So we get to vote on who the senator from Texas is, but they have to live in Texas, but because there's a residency requirement. But the people from Texas get to say we don't like Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey. So that's the analogy that I mean. And would that be better though?
I don't think so at all. I think the current model, the ward alderman, the ward councilor, is a check on that at-large model. It should be. And I think that if we eliminate the at-large requirement for the ward councilors being proposed, I think that would be a much smarter solution. And if we kept the 4 being elected at large, I think that would be a better compromise. But that's not what the Charter Commission has
Yeah, I
proposed.
mean, you don't want to criticize at-large councilors. You know, you were one,
Right.
but again, there's different
No, feel
perspectives.
free.
They come with different perspectives, and
Certainly.
again, it's just having a diversity of viewpoints that are so certainly that everyone listens. The Charter Commission listened. I wouldn't criticize them for listening, but did they reflect that listening in their own viewpoints and then reconcile it amongst themselves to something that would work better? There was a whole, so certainly one argument is the council is large, and it is, statistically it is large, but the real concern people have is how it was reduced. There was a very popular choices that could have been chosen otherwise that would retain ward councilors.
Let me make another argument here. Newton, you said before, Jack, Newton residents are busy.
Right.
And they don't have a lot of time to pay attention to all these races.
Right.
One thing that people do is they send slates around, they send emails around, and right now they can't put the ward councilors in that slate because different people vote in different ward councilors. Wouldn't it be easier if people who are sending a citywide slate could just say, vote for all these 12 people, and everyone, they could send it citywide, and then their friends could just vote for all 12?
Well, that's certainly the problem is, and again, there's a lot of issues, but you want people that are elected. Emily Norton's a good example, a bit of a maverick, and elected by, shoe leather, walking the ward, reaching out to people, not through central support. Slates come from central support, they come from central interests, and there's a place for that, but all of the entire council should not be vetted by special interests or vetted by the central party powers. When you talk about slate, one weakness of the slate component of the council is you can't vote someone off. It's not a head-to-head. There's a lot of people very passionate that if I disagree with you as a councilor, then I can run against you, or I can encourage someone else to run against you, and then it's clear, and issues are clarified and positions are clarified. The way this will work, it's kind of a beauty contest where everyone, there's no real competition, and this is how the Charter Commission was elected, and it really came down to slates, and there were slates, and with one flavor of slates with another, and largely the city wasn't paying attention to the details of it.
And the residents I've spoken to, I think they're much more concerned with their access and their relationship with their councilors and the kind of influence they have over them, and not necessarily the absolute number of councilors. And I wish the commission had investigated that more clearly or more thoroughly and find out precisely why residents were asking to cut the number, because there has to be a reason behind that and not just simply the motivation to do so.
Okay, well, let me just transition to our next topic, which is the term limits. But I'm going to very quickly put a couple thoughts on the table here. First of all, I want to say up front, and I've said this individually to the members of the Charter Commission, I have tremendous admiration for the work they did. I think they all came to it with a goal of making Newton a better place. They all believed that they're all dedicated to the community. Their motives are all good. I don't buy that they have. I've heard some things that they've got ulterior motives. In some cases, I don't. that they're trying to do something else. I think they all have good motives. I think they're all good people. They're all smart people. I happen to disagree with some of the things that they've come up with, just specifically on this issue of accountability. My experience in being elected citywide from a ward is it's kind of a weird system. People move to Newton, and you have to explain, well, yeah, I'm an alderman at large, but no, you can't vote for. I mean,
it's really unique. It's only
so like the first time you go to vote, like in Newton, you're like, okay, that's the Ward 7 person. I don't live in Ward 7. I can't vote, but they're at large from 7. And what it does, I think, is it creates a lot of races that people have to vote in. So right under our current system, you've got 16 at-large people, councilors, 1 ward councilor, so that's 17 seats. Then the whole school committee is elected by that same bizarre at-large from a district.
But actually, one key point is, so there's, if you can think about it, to currently, just let's stick it to the city council rather than bring the school committee in.
Well, I just want to do a math problem.
So there's 9 races today.
No. So here
it doesn't change, but go ahead.
Well, no. Here's my point, and you may disagree with this, and feel free to. But let me make it first.
Right.
Which is that if you under our current system, we're to have a contested race for each of those 17 seats. But then there's 8 school committee members also elected at large, so that's up to 25. And then in a mayoral year, that's 26. 2 people running for each of those seats, you'd have to get to know 52 candidates. You'd need a deck of cards to get to know them.
Well, but think
please, Jeff.
Okay.
And so I think under our current system, there are it's structured so that there's too many candidates that a person has to get to know. Think about it. Federally, you vote for 1 U.S. representative, 2 U.S. senators, not in the same year usually, 1 president and 1 vice president, 5 people. Statewide, you have 1 state rep, 1 state senator, 5 constitutional officers, I think, 7 people, and a governor's council or 2, whatever they do. And then what I always thought would make sense is if we were going to reduce the size of the city council, and I've always thought that could be done in a very smart way and supported it, is that you should keep the district councilors and then have a pool of at-large people. So you could have 5 or 7 from anywhere in the city. So you had say a 15-member council. You could have 8 district councilors, 7 at large from anywhere in the city, total of 15. That way you'd only have to vote for those 7 at large plus your 1 district person. Make the school committee district, so you'd have to vote for 1 school committee member. So you'd have the 7 at large you'd vote for plus 2 district people plus mayor, 10 rather than the current 26.
That's a lot of numbers, but let's number of races, right? In the current system, there's 8 races for 8 ward, 8 at-large seats by ward, 1 ward councilor. 9 races you have to follow. The proposal is 8 ward at-large seats plus 1 slate. It's still 9. 9 in both cases.
So my point is actually
it doesn't
right
reduce
now,
it.
My point is actually, I think it's if anything, it's worse under this proposal because what you've got is you've got 12 at-large seats, plus you've got 12, plus you've got 8 school committee members all at large. Right. So 12 plus 8, if I'm doing my math correctly, and you guys are both saying we're at 20 there.
I agree with you.
But so 20 plus 1. So okay, it's not much improved. Maybe so it's 20 plus mayor, 21. So you're at 42 as opposed to 52.
So for the voter experience, there is really no change.
Minimal, yeah. So that's my objection to this. But that's more esoteric. My real concern is I found over the years that the ward councilors tend to be the most accountable to the people in their wards, and I got to say, as an at-large. Alderman for 18 years. I mean, at a certain point, when you represent everyone, you represent no one. I mean, you don't.
Yes.
You can't.
Right.
I mean,
you'll be elected at large, and you'll represent no one, and they'll be forced to focus on fundraising, and they'll be forced to not take sides on any issue.
Just under the current system, I never felt that accountable to any particular person. Because I mean, and I always tried to act as though I could be held accountable. But the truth is, there's so many different constituencies in the city, people can pick and choose which constituencies they want to be responsive to. And so I think there's less accountability under that model. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that topic. Let's go to term limits.
Okay.
And there'll be more time later to make some follow-up points, Duney, if you want to. Sorry about that, Duney. Anyway, so term limits. I'm going to give the case from the Yes Campaign website as to why term limits are a good thing. So first of all, let's go over what they propose. They propose a term limit of 3 consecutive year terms, 3 consecutive 4-year terms for mayor. Currently, there is no term limit for mayor. Thus, Ted Mann was able to serve 20 some odd years, 22, 23 years. David Cohen served 12 years. He could not. He had an option of running again. He did not run again, but he could have under the current law, not under this proposal. They also propose, I believe, a 16-year limit, correct me if I'm wrong, for the counselors, and they want to keep the current 8-year limit for the school committee members. So they have several arguments for why term limits are good. First of all, they say the power of incumbency causes incumbents to get reelected, so term limits creates turnover. It creates more contested races where there's no incumbent running. And elected bodies benefit from a balance between institutional knowledge and fresh perspectives. They're trying to encourage more fresh perspectives. They're saying there's not enough turnover in council seats. People are hanging around too long, essentially. Yeah. So that's the argument. Duney, I'm going to let you lead off the response to that.
So I'm not so sure that the arguments made in the final report hold up. Especially about the power of the incumbency. They said that the power of the incumbency is perhaps stronger in local government than it is in federal government. I find that odd, if considering they added term limits that are longer than the president's.
Well, you're talking about members of Congress, which they have a pretty high reelection rate.
Yeah, members of Congress. Yeah, certainly.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but the mayor's term limits are 4 terms. So I can't see how that really reflects their intent of hobbling the power of the incumbency in local government where it's stronger.
So I guess it's 3 terms for mayor they're proposing.
Okay, what? You
3
said
terms,
16
12
years, right?
12 years for mayor, 16 for the,
okay,
I
yeah.
think 8.
So 12 years, 3 terms, so still longer, yeah.
So basically what they're saying is they want, right now someone could serve, I guess, forever. Well, Wendell Bachman served for more than 50 years on the city council. Wendell could only serve for 16 years under this rule, or 16 consecutive. I guess people can leave and come back under their
So it's a solution for people who have served quite a long time, certainly, but I think, again, is
this an improvement? I guess that's my question. Is term limits an improvement to stop people? I served 18 years. I would have been cut off after.
Well, I think it depends on what your goals are. If your goals are to have a more engaged democracy and where your citizens are actually privy to or engaged in what's going on in their city, then I don't think so. If it is to force people to resign, then sure. But this is, again, I think the solution to the problem is going out and asking voters and engaging with them, finding out, talking to people, gaining their confidence, recruiting them to be part of what's going on in the city. That's the solution. And if people are doing that, then they will know who they should and should not be electing, who they should and should not be re-electing. That is, I think, what people are looking for.
Jack,
so a couple points. First, I think 16 years is if you have a bad city councilor, 16 years is a long time to put up with them. So in that sense, it doesn't feel right.
There are no bad city councilors.
On the other, and one thing that was unclear to me early on in this was whether it was retroactive. It wasn't clear from the language, but until it was clear to me, I did the calculation. It would wipe out, I think it was close to 1/3 of the current council. Now there may be a few people that
now it's not going to be retroactive.
It's not retroactive.
It's just prospective.
It's prospective, so it starts fresh. So of course, there's probably a few city councilors supporting the charter commission that might not be for it.
Just so our viewers understand this means that if this passes, 16 years from now, everyone, if they all
they could still be here.
They would all be wiped out simultaneously.
In theory, if they all stay, if they don't turn over,
then there would be like a massive.
So I think for a bad counselor, it's a long time. For the good counselors, it's actually, there's a lot of people that people like, and I forget the percent. Ted Hessman probably, I think, could be out.
Ted's not running for
re-election. He's not running, but he spoke pretty passionately against term limits, and in the Globe, it's out there. He does support the charter now for some reason, but he was against the term limit piece. So I think the other piece is institutional knowledge, and I've attended. I do watch and attend city councils meetings trying to understand it. And when things come up, there is institutional knowledge, and there's a few people who can say we addressed this or this is how we decided. And what happens with term limits is all that knowledge goes to the executive branch, to the administration, to the bureaucracy, so you lose some power. The other thing that I've read is that with term limits, people will tend to wait to the end of the term to challenge someone. And so if it's a school committee and they know someone's going to be out in 8 years, and they have,
that's the maximum becomes the minimum.
And the maximum becomes the minimum. So that's another concern. So I don't, obviously
we've seen that on the school committee. Unless someone is really doing a horrible job, people just wait it out. Like, the term limit's going to.
So it's. I think it doesn't help for someone who's bad,
16,
fast enough, and for someone who's good, it penalizes them inappropriately. Just to wipe out. There are very beloved on both sides of a lot of issues. People on the council, and it seems like a waste. Now they can come back if they sit out. It's like a sabbatical, so at least it's not a lifetime, and maybe they deserve a break.
It's a timeout.
They deserve.
You deserve a break today.
But,
I'll tell you, once you get a break from it, you don't come back.
So that's
some people do.
That's kind of the story there on term limits.
Okay.
And as far as institutional knowledge, I think you're right. That's certainly an attribute for someone who's served in government for quite a long time. But of course, I think there is a role for someone to be a private citizen and also use that knowledge to engage with other citizens, to be on the other side of the bench when the city council is doing what it does.
What about this argument that incumbents have an unfair advantage, Jack? Right? That you want to level the playing field by kicking those incumbents out.
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly name recognition for at-large, politicians does start to kick in, where people kind of recognize the name and they'll continue.
Well, of course, you've got these people who are on the school committee, run for city council, or from council, run for school committee, and this wouldn't prevent people from.
I mean, I don't think the commission's complaint that it's hard to unseat them. It's just that they would like to see people more challenged. And I think, in the politics today, engagement is going to ramp up. And you are going to see a lot more people engaged in government, engaged in local government, and whatever the history has been, regardless of what the composition of the council is, there will be people challenging them. So, I think incumbency. It's not like these people are building huge war chests up and sitting on them. That maybe someone might some of them, they give a few dollars there. So I don't know if that's
this issue is fascinating to me in conjunction with the other issue, the composition issue, because I mean, in my experience, and I guess I'll put my 2 cents in on this one a little bit. In my experience in Newton, it's much easier for someone to run against a ward councilor than it is to run against an at-large councilor. So if your concern is the unfair advantage that an incumbent has, I can tell you a lot of ward council incumbents, like Bob Antonellis, like Terry O'Halloran, like Christine Samuelson, like George Mansfield, that were defeated by someone just knocking on doors in the ward without a big budget.
And this is a key point. I mean, and Duney and I aren't hitting the key points, but I think this is a key point. For an entree for someone who wanted to get engaged in city government, going in as a ward councilor is achievable. They may have built credibility on the school council and the PTO, local volunteering, so they're known in their greater village and their ward. And now it's not one-to-one ward to village, but they have a way to get in. Scott Lennon, mayor candidate, got in, ran once and lost, got in as a ward
from
councilor.
Ward 1, right?
Yes, from Ward 1, and then he upgraded to at large to have larger name visibility. And he could have kept his his ward councilor roots, and he would say that he still kind of approaches his job the same way. But we would not have him as a mayor candidate if we didn't have ward councilors.
It's so funny. David Cohen, the former mayor, was a ward alderman. And he said to me something which I found very interesting. He thought ward alderman was a much better position than at large. He never wanted. He could have run at large. He eventually ran for state rep and won. He said to me that he thought being a ward council, ward alderman, made you the go-to person for constituent services. You were accountable. You were top of mind.
You have to run into these people almost regularly. Right.
Yeah, I mean, he thought it was a better base on which to run for higher office than an at-large position, just from a politician standpoint, let alone from a structure of government. But the thing that perplexes me about, if the goal is to have contested races, you would think you would want it to be
more local.
The barrier to entry. I mean, it costs a lot to run a citywide.
Yeah, I mean, the quote is that Jay Auchincloss ran, and it cost him. First he was a student or coming off being a student, so he was able to, like you, to walk the entire city, which not everyone can do, that is engaged with active day jobs at that time, and he needed to raise $30,000 to unseat an incumbent.
My first race I think cost $10,000, and that was in 1991. So adjust for inflation.
Little bit
that was
inflation,
citywide, and so if you don't have the resources to run a citywide campaign,
you're automatically disqualified.
You're out. You don't have a chance.
Right. Yeah. You need the resources, or you need the strong support of central party or key special interests that will help there.
Right. And
So-
the people who will succeed this proposed charter charter amendments will be forced to focus on
Yeah,
fundraising because of these changes.
So I mean, there are a couple of my heroes who've had a few one-liner quips about term limits that over the years, and I don't remember whose is whose. So I think one of these was a Barney Frank quote, but. We've got term limits. They're called elections. You don't like the job I'm doing? Vote me out.
That's what I've been saying. Absolutely. That's why we have a democracy. That's why we have elections.
And of course, Barney was there for far more years than the
Right.
proposed term limit, and I was glad to have him keep being reelected. It was fun having the smartest, most liberal member of Congress representing.
I mean,
me.
one challenge with the pick 4 slate component is if someone isn't performing, it's very hard. We talked about it earlier. It's very hard to vote them out. You know, you can't run against one of 4.
I'm going to disagree with you there, Jack, in the sense that I don't have a problem with at-large seats being truly at-large.
Right.
It works in every city that's got at-large.
Yeah, no,
seats.
it's
I think as long as you've got the district seats, having some at-large, having the top citywide vote getters, it does create.
So it's a good point. It's a good point.
Contested race.
And the commission, if they were here, and which they were, would make the point that it is very common, and we have the data on the state of Massachusetts to have at-large seats without residency requirements. But the counterpoint to that is 84% of Massachusetts cities include ward elected representatives. It is the norm. There's only 9 cities in the state that don't have ward elected councilors. And,
or some kind of district. Obviously, in Boston, it's a district.
Well, you can label it, but it's not 100%.
Right. No. I mean, I admire the process that the Charter Commission went through and the hearings and the time. And the one thing that I don't have a problem with is having some super at large
If it's
seats.
balanced.
Right.
But I think
unusual,
you need to have the district seats too.
Absolutely.
I think you just going from one extreme to the other doesn't make any sense to me. I wouldn't want all ward representatives either. I think having some at large are good.
And the proposed ward representatives here are only that in name. And so you're right.
Yeah,
It's
no,
all
there
that
are
change.
no
There
ward
are no ward
representatives
representatives.
in there. That's what I was, an alderman.
Right,
at large.
and not to their credit. I mean, they do take an interest in their neighborhoods. They know their neighborhoods, but it's not the same as actually having to reach out to them particularly.
You don't have the accountability.
And it's too overwhelming a
to be
task. You have far too many people to attend to, so you won't be able to take any sides on any issues.
Yeah, and
Well-
I mean, I think they're less accessible. You just don't want to bother an at-large counselor somewhere in the city. In theory, they're all there to help you, but they're getting hundreds of messages
Well,
a
you know,
day.
it is funny
Whereas I
'cause
don't mind bothering my ward
Yeah,
counselor
it's
because I know
more
they're there
work
for us.
fewer people. It's more power in fewer hands.
Yeah, but I mean, the main thing is, if there's a issue in your ward, you're not accountable to the voters of that ward, as if you're elected at large from that ward. Because if you disagree with it, you can still get your vote somewhere
And we've
else in
seen
the
that.
city.
It's happened, yeah.
It certainly has, and people who lose their own ward and get reelected, it's anyway. But in terms, we're off the term limits thing. There are a couple other good quotes on term limits that I'll just share. So another one is that I think the maximum becomes the minimum. People and we've seen this with the school committee. It's an 8-year maximum term limit. But people kind of go, oh, well, that seat's going to open up in a couple of years. So you end up, ironically, with fewer contested races because people are like, why would you want to run against an incumbent when you know there's not going to be an incumbent in a couple of years? So I think it's an admirable goal the charter commissioners had. I think this is self-defeating. And fundamentally, to me, term limits are just undemocratic. It really should be up to the voters whether they want to keep the person they like that person. It should be,
and it doesn't actually solve the problems that term limits are supposed to be solving. It's it's a solution in search of a problem.
Exactly. Well, I mean, Ruth Pfaelzer, I believe, has been there since 1998. And if we had the term limits that people wanted in Massachusetts, she would have been out after 8 years. That would have been 2006. We would have lost out on 11 years of the best state representative in Massachusetts. And I would be sad about that because Ruth is fantastic. She's like, not to disparage any of our other state reps. Kay's great. They're all great. But Ruth is amazing. I felt the same way about Barney Frank. I felt and by the same token, there's some people who ought to have a term limit of 1 term, or our current president, a term limit of 1/10 of 1 term.
100 days.
Yeah, I think this term limit should be over right now. So to me, it's just, I've always felt that way, and I've discussed that with the members of the commission, and I'm sure we'll have that conversation with Brian and Brian Barash, Chris Steele, Brooke Lipset, and others when they're on the show.
Well, I hope you can have
coming months.
yes and no together, right?
Yeah, we're doing that in October. We're going to have yes and no together at the table at the same
Great.
time. in October. October. Did I say November? October.
October, yeah.
The last
Yeah.
show before the election. October 12th. Mark your calendars. It's going to be marvelous. All right.
Bigger table.
So, all right. So that was topic number 2, term limits. Let's talk about the other stuff that the Charter Commission A, proposed, or B, didn't propose. So the Charter Commission, as I said before, did a fabulous job of organizing their work. I think a lot of this credit goes to Josh Krinsman, but to all the members of the commission, they organized things logically by topic. They delegated things. They had a lot of hearings and opportunities for input, which I think was terrific. I again don't like the finished product, but it's like, you know, the irony is they say people who don't like laws and sausages should never watch either one being made. Here, I think the way they were making it was really good.
Well,
it's just what came out of the oven. I'm not crazy.
Well, I mean, I think the key is, I mean, they did, and I would agree that Josh has done a good job. You know, it is even, you know, we have disagreements with the process and certainly the policy, but he did a good job with it. But we have to note that they straw voted 9-0 to eliminate ward councilors, or to not even consider them. They weren't even on the menu in April of 2016, really just a few weeks into having organized themselves. And so they've used the time, and I think the rest of the package is not controversial. I think the current city council could delete. They could, if it doesn't pass, the city council could delete the parts that that they don't like, and the whole package could go in as a home rule petition and update things. So, so it's really not about those pieces. It's not a yes or no on those. I think the good things can come.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think there's some things there are other things they did, like with the area councils. Right now, we have the ability of area councils to have enumerated powers, which are in the charter. They eliminated all those enumerated powers. Now, they didn't say that the city council can't give the area councils powers, but it's a lot different to say, here's the list of things we can give them, and they can say, well, we want the things on the list, than to say, you can only give them things. Now they also did change the funding mechanism, which could potentially be a good thing. So I don't think it's all bad, but what struck me as interesting is as I was saying before, they had this very organized process of hearings. And the first hearing, I think it was the first hearing, they invited a panel of people, including former Mayor David Cohen, former longtime alderman and Finance Committee Chair Paul Coletti. I was among that group. A few other people were. Ted Hess-Mahan testified that night. And there were a whole lot of what I thought were very interesting and innovative ideas. Now, going back to the previous Charter Commission in the early 70s, Florence Rubin chaired that, and I had the opportunity to talk with her many times about their work. And they did so many really exciting, innovative things. They, for example, put in the financial forecast, the 5-year fiscal forecast. They put in a provision requiring an ombudsman, essentially, for the city, a citizen assistance officer. They put in some limited early sort of transparency rules about there has to be an annual report. They put in a capital improvement plan, so there's a process for doing capital planning. They had a whole bunch of very specific ideas for modernizing government. And the night I was there, I'm just going to read a few of the ideas that I think may have fallen by I think there's a missed opportunity here. And so in terms of transparency and account, so a couple of the things. A sunshine provision. Many states have sunshine laws requiring ease of access to public records. Massachusetts does not. Cities and towns can adopt them. That would be something I think would have been worth doing, and that was something that was discussed. Mayor Cohen talked about reforms to the land use process. That's something that I think could have been useful. Another one's require that the administration explain the reasons for changes in departmental leadership and policy terms. Without breaching employee confidentiality, but if you're changing the head of a department, you have a statement so there's more transparency about that. Publish citizen complaint data, aggregate reports, not individual names, that the citizen assistance officer gets, that the city gets, so you know what people are complaining about. And while I was an alderman, I got some of this data, but it could be on the web now. Other cities and towns do it. That's the kind of thing that could be in a modern charter. Full accounting of budgetary impacts and policies, not just revenue, but also costs. Again, we don't have that kind of accounting mandated. Operational efficiency. require an annual operations report that lists areas of needed improvement. That's the kind of planning tool in California in particular, and in some of the county-run governments that's required in their charters. There's so many innovative things going on around the country.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to list a couple more that people mentioned. Goal setting, have a public process of goal setting, like what the city's carbon footprint is, that kind of thing. Again, this is California is often on the cutting edge of these things. There are cities that have in their charters there that you have to put out these annual environmental impact statements, for example. Right now we have a 5-year fiscal forecast, which shows all these growing deficits out 5 years. That was a great innovation in the early 70s when Florence Rubin and that commission did it. But they haven't, as far as I can tell, as far as I can tell, they didn't look at the possibility of turning that forecast into a plan, a 5-year fiscal plan requirement, which is, again, something that was raised at one of their hearings. So I think the hearings are great. I'm not sure if they were picking up on all the suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, people have to embrace the ideas, not just hear them. I mean, just as you mentioned California, I do want to mention another thing. One thing that comes up, California at-large voting is being challenged a lot under the Civil Rights Act because it allows for...
It wasn't in Ferguson. There was a lot of places.
Where you have 100% at-large voting without residency, particularly, you can have concentrations. This charter allows 5 people to be from one ward, from one street, from one house. And so 5 times more power in one ward
so, I mean,
over the
question
rest.
I'm getting at for both of you, and I know this is a long-winded way of asking it. There was one other category, infrastructure planning, giving some more teeth to the capital improvement plan. Right now, there's a thing in the charter that they put in, which is right now there's a charter maintenance provision for the schools, which sets a percentage of the school budget for maintenance. It's called charter maintenance because it's in the city charter. Requiring that on the city side and making it a minimum, not a maximum, which is now. I mean, a lot of really interesting fiscal and infrastructure planning ideas that were put out there. And then there were people who proposed, for example, going to a manager rather than a mayor. Don't know if they talked about that. There were a lot of different kinds of ideas that were talked about. And so what I'm wondering is what your thoughts are on if we get another crack at this. If this one gets voted down, is there anything you'd like to see the next Charter Commission do? Is there anything that would get you excited, that would turn your no into a yes? If next time, if this goes down, what could you get behind?
Yeah, I think that there were plenty of missed opportunities. There could be citizen oversight of the Newton Police Department. We could have had massive investment in renewable energy by forcing new developers, which is obviously a hot topic in the city, to include solar on all of their developments, or to institute water reclamation. There's plenty of things. But climate change, I think, was the glaring omission in this report. They had no focus on what is the biggest issue facing humans currently. And I think Newton obviously has a role to play in informing its citizens about what we can do, what the possibilities are in that way. And I think the Sunshine Laws was actually a great idea. Minimum wage, that's always a winner. I think
you mean a municipal minimum wage is higher than the state minimum wage.
Right, yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
would that be in the charter or in a law, or do you think that?
Yeah, you could tie the minimum wage to the city councilor's pay or to the mayor's pay, or you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, no, you don't want that. The minimum wage would be less than the state wage. It was tied to the city council.
But it would force our representatives to have the perspective of citizens. Is what I mean.
So you're saying that there were opportunities for social justice that were not integrated?
Yes, absolutely. There were plenty of opportunities to reform this city. This is as you said, our constitutional equivalent. And there were so many creative ways and innovative ways to make our city far more engaged in the ways that they expect their recommendations to achieve, but I don't think that will be.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is...
What would get you to be a yes, Jack? What do you... If you could right now take a red pen to
I think
proposal.
the key thing is the charter... it's a council composition. That's the elephant in the room. It dominates everything else. I mean, I think there would be massive citywide support for a council of 16 members. 16, 8 at ward, 8 at large.
8 at large.
One,
I wouldn't support that. You know why?
Why is that?
Because I can't stand the even number. Yeah. It makes in tie votes. We had a
deadlock
for months with 24, but the smaller you make the number, the more likely you're going to have
I think that's
deadlocks.
a really important point to make, because they claim that they follow the Model City Charter. If you look at the Model City Charter, it takes as an absolute assumption that city council will be odd numbered. If you
Every other city council everywhere.
every other city council in Massachusetts is odd. The actual bylaws or the state statutes that govern charters say that multi-member bodies need to be odd numbered. It's very
I don't even
unusual.
understand. Didn't they, at some point in their process, they had it?
They had 13, and then I was at that meeting, or I certainly listened. I think I was at the meeting because I attended a few. I tried to really engage. I didn't see this as developing into a problem. I thought it was an interesting civic exercise. But the rationale was that the land use requires a 2/3 vote. And so 2/3 of 13 is 8.65 or something.
You round up.
And so then you need 9 votes instead of 8. And so if you want the minimum number of votes to pass a special permit, you make it 12. That was the rationale. And it leaves us as
Why didn't you have a 3-member city council? Now, like, you only need 2 votes. That doesn't make any sense at all.
But of course, this is just an example of what they could have done.
To your earlier question, I think it is a big effort to get a charter commission created to run it through. And so I think the key is that we need to advocate. Everything the charter commission is doing, our city council can do. And so if the citizens and the councilors themselves data mine this gathering, they are able to do all these things, including change the size of the board. So,
well,
or the council.
theory is that the board will never vote to reduce its own size because people don't want to give up their positions.
Yeah, well, they have a unique. There's a lot of turnover this year, so maybe they can take it on as an alternative. I'd like to see them do that. But I think a lot of the
via a home rule petition.
Yes, home rule is available, and yes, when you have it's difficult to decide who gets voted off the island in that situation. No one wants to do it.
Well, you make it effective 6 years in the future, and then
it's just unfortunate. It's very unfortunate because you could argue that that maybe smaller would be better. And that the commission squandered that opportunity with a proposal that really has a lot of problems that there's going to be a lot of opposition to.
So when I was trying to get people onto this onto this panel from the yes side tonight, first of course I reached out to the charter commissioners. I emailed Josh and a couple others asking him to forward that around. I also emailed members of the Yes campaign, the 3 co-chairs of that. But then when I didn't get anyone from those channels, I actually just started calling down the list of people who endorsed on the Yes side. And I kept getting these answers like, well, I agreed to be listed as a yes, but I really don't like term limits. Or I agreed to be listed as a yes,
well, that's good to know.
but no, so I'm going to vote for it, but I really wouldn't be a good advocate. Or some people, I really wish they had kept I want to reduce the size, but I'd really prefer they kept the ward councilor. So one thing, and I don't know if you've noticed this, is there an enthusiasm gap? I think that the people on the no side are passionate about this. On the yes side, I mean, I couldn't find anyone. There's more chairs here, people.
Well, so I have to take this opportunity because we don't have that much time left because I forgot to do it. NewtonDemocracy.org is the website of the ballot committee opposing the charter. So
hang on, just a second. Newton Democracy.
NewtonDemocracy.org.
.org. So the city name Newton.
Yes.
Democracy, like what we want to have.
Yes.
Or what we theoretically have. .org.
Right. So and we've accumulated. I haven't checked lately, but we're up to 220 or so, residents who are passionately against the charter. We have more that are against it, but these are the people that are against.
So they're for the existing.
They're against what's being proposed. The vote no group, and those are the people willing to put their name out there, and publicly. There's more people obviously who are against it, who don't really want to make waves, and I think what's interesting, it's in a very diverse group. I mean, Newton politics. If you look at that list, these are people that across the spectrum of policies, across the spectrum of Republican to Democrat, but they disagree with this. They, even the ones that might see this as favorable to their agendas, they appreciate democracy. They appreciate the argument.
That's why I don't buy the attacks on the Charter Commission's motives, because I think they all love the city and want the best thing for the city.
I mean, I think the last member to get in got 3.5% of the city's votes. So with everything else going on in that election, people weren't paying attention. I honestly, we talked about it earlier. I believe that the slate recommendations of some key special interests were the difference between people getting 3% or 2% of the vote of the city.
They were all elected at large, so
and their positions weren't clear, and that process, that at-large process, didn't clarify it. If I ran against you, we could say, well, what do we agree about? What do we disagree about? And people would have
run for. Let's run against
people would have a basis for it. And honestly, I did not see that it would come together, and I just wish. I mean, you can Karen Manning's done a great job, on the Charter Commission, transcribing all their meetings, the minutes, and the audio is ever
They're
there.
so
It's
well
there,
organized, and you can. I love the
but
website.
if you look and if you read the minutes, you see that on the topic of ward councilors and composition, it took 20 minutes for them to come to a 9-0 straw vote. So as much as they've deliberated, as much as they claim to have gathered data, they have gathered some data. They were just in lockstep on this, and a city council that is lockstep on any issue is concerning.
Well,
You want to have the argument there, and there's been a lot of examples recently. What is it? The sanctuary city debate.
Yes.
I didn't see it or hear it, but universally I've heard that people came in from very different points of view, and they came to something of a consensus or a compromise that worked for the city. And this happens
all the time.
It happens again and again. There's people who come into an issue happy with where it starts, and there's people who end still not happy where it ends. But if they're all people happy where it starts, then things don't get sorted out.
But
in
as
the
long as
details.
voters feel as though their voice is being heard, that's precisely the problem here, is that people can't have confidence in a democracy if they feel like they are not being heard. And this at-large model is what they're going to take away from our citizens.
There's something really interesting that I think Jackie just made me think of. This is a lot of people. I mean, I don't think the charter commissioners are trying to jam through a model that will promote big development. I've heard this. I don't think that is their motivation. I think that there are people in the city who think that they will get better policies out of an all-at-large because they'll be accountable citywide, and they like the idea that it'll be their agenda.
Well, certainly the strongest supporters are in that camp.
Okay, so I think there are people who think you might get more housing, more development if they vote for this model. I think there are people in the city. I don't count the charter commissioners among those. However, the irony is you'll have a more volatile elected body because all of it's going to be elected citywide. And that means if there's a reaction against what those people want and people go, oh my God, there's too much development, then you'll get the whole thing
that's a very
turned
good
over.
point.
It's not like, be careful what you wish for.
I mean, that's a very good point. And as I understand, many years ago, Republicans took over the school committee with a sort of a stealth, slate campaign. And suddenly, careful what you wish for. So that's absolutely true. So maybe that's good. But I mean, I guess
all I'm saying is I think you've got more stability if you've got people being elected by different constituencies.
Yes, we need
51% of the people shouldn't be able to control all the seats.
I mean, if that's what you want, why are we wasting time here? Let's just elect a mayor that represents our views and policies, and have them name the council that works for them. If everything's at large, let Trump.
Why do we even have a council?
Let Trump make Trump mayor.
If you want let him pick his Senate, pick his representatives.
Dictators get things done. Then that's not the problem that we have here.
It's not there. But
who was it who said democracy?
It's what the voters want to happen in their neighborhoods.
I think democracy is the worst form of government ever, except for everything else that's ever been tried.
Representative democracy.
I
like that.
It's the most. It's the I was Churchill, I think, or something to that effect.
Yes.
Anyway, this has been a really interesting discussion.
Absolutely.
Again, we are going to get charter commissioners back around this table as they've been in the past, and the co-chairs and other advocates from the Yes campaign. But you two were fantastic.
Thank you,
Chad.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Duney.
Please visit the website, because I don't think we did the points justice. Duney did do a good job, but I don't think I've covered everything. So please come to newtondemocracy.org and read, see what neighbors are supporting it. It's a diverse group.
Support our campaign.
And go to the Google the Yes website too. I don't know the URL off the top of my head.
I'm not going to give it to you. They have to come if they want their website advertised.
It's easy to find though. And check out the arguments, and we will have around this table a diversity of viewpoint in coming months. And hopefully Newton voters will do the right thing in November and show up and vote, because that is the one thing in a democracy. You don't show up, you can't hold anyone accountable.
You get what you deserve.
You get exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you to our wonderful crew, to Richard and Liz on camera, to Brian, our director, to Will and Arthur, and everyone else helping out on the show. I hope I didn't forget anyone there. And thank you at home for watching. Please join us again next month when we have Amy Sangiello on and we try to find just a little bit more common ground.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Searching for help with Dachshund breeding.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Information on hot water heating.
No. Sarah's bright, but when she's reading, she has trouble sounding out the words.
World music, playing track now.
No.
Let me try. Our daughter gets confused about which details in a story are important.
Which paper towels are most absorbent?
What?
Here are 5 product reviews.
Why are you not getting me?
See, I told you.
Wait, I was trying to show you how Sarah feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
For the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues, this is what life can feel like. Explore understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues, designed to help your child thrive in school and in life. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.